Hi, and welcome to the Jocelyn Drake Show. I am your host, Jocelyn Drake. We have a very informative show for you today. Every year, thousands of men, women, and children fall into the hands of traffickers in their own countries and abroad. Almost every country in the world is affected by trafficking, whether as a country of origin, transit, or destination for victims. Human trafficking is a form of modern-day slavery and involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to exploit human beings for some type of labor or commercial sex purpose. Today's guest is here to talk to us about human trafficking in America. Help me welcome to the Jocelyn Drake Show, Tawanda from the Wells House. Thank you so much, Tawanda, for joining us on the Jocelyn Drake Show. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am Tawanda, and I'm from the Well House. We are a safe house that rescues and seeks to restore women that have been trafficked or sexually exploited. I am the rescue coordinator, and I've been there for 4 years. And I also answer the crisis line 24/7.
Oh wow, that seems like a lot of responsibility. That seems huge, and we'll ask you a little bit more about that later on in the show. Can you kind of define to us exactly what is human trafficking?
Human trafficking is modern day slavery. It's basically a trafficker gets a woman and he forces them, coerces them to sell their body for money. It's pretty much what human trafficking is.
Wow. I am reading here that it says that according to the U.S. State Department, 600,000 to 800,000 people are trafficked across international borders every year, of which 80% are female and half are children. It also says that there are approximately 20 to 30 million slaves in the world today. From my understanding, a lot of them are not in prison somewhere. We may be passing them by on the streets and not even knowing it at the gas station. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, in a typical situation of trafficking, it's not like a movie. It's not what you would think you would see. It could just be like a gentleman and maybe 2 or 3 women. They look like they're traveling.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a young girl and maybe an older guy, and you may think it's a father and daughter.
Mm-hmm.
It does not have to be something that's just going to stand out to you. But a lot of times when you really look at it and you research it and you learn more about it, the signs are there. You will see it, You will see maybe when they pull up at the gas station, only he will get out. Or maybe one of the ladies will get out. But most of the times you will notice certain things once you start learning more about trafficking.
So tell us a little bit about the Wells House. I became a little affiliated with it when I invited you all to an event I'd had, and I also went through your training program because I wanted to get involved. Let us know a little bit about the Wells House.
Okay, well, the Well House, we are a safe house for women that have been trafficked or sexually exploited. We have 2 facilities right now on 63 acres. We have an immediate shelter, and that's where we immediately get the women in and take them off of the streets and get them, health care, dental work, trauma counseling, and so forth and so on. After they've been there for about 90 days, they can apply to go to the long term, or sometimes they choose to go be reunited with their family. It just depends on what they want. And in the long term, they set goals for themselves. We have women that are in college. We have women that, seek to get their children back.
Mm-hmm.
And next month, we will be breaking ground on about 8 apartments that will serve as our transitional portion to our facility.
Awesome, awesome. So statistics say the average age of a teen entering into sex trade is 12 to 14 years old. Many of them are runaway girls who are sexually abused as children. So they're trying to run away for safety's sake into another form of prison. What do you say to these young ladies who have experienced this at home and don't, know a way out and think running away is the only answer?
It's very hard to say because a lot of times when they experience this at home, it's from someone who loves them or who they believe to love them, a father, a brother, an uncle, sometimes even a mother. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, they don't know another way. They don't know who to go to. I would suggest them, reach out to a teacher, reach out to a guidance counselor at school. Sometimes you may even be able to confide in a friend, a pastor, a church member. It's better to say something than to not say something.
Right, because running away and being on the street alone with no one that is very dangerous, and you could end up like a lot of the young ladies into this form of slavery.
Correct.
Okay. If someone consents, is it still considered human trafficking?
I think no one ever consents to be trafficked. You'll see young ladies consent to, yes, I'll go out of town with you, and they get out of town and it's another story. Yes, they've agreed to go to another state, but they didn't agree to the things that are going to happen to them when they get there. So I think in terms of a consent, it's never really a consent to be trafficked, especially when you're a minor. You can't consent to sex at 12 and 14 years old.
Good point. Human trafficking is the third largest international crime industry behind illegal drugs and arms trafficking. It is reported that it generates a profit of $32 billion a year. Of that number, $15.5 billion is made in industrialized countries. What do you say to that? I mean, that is such on a large scale. Do you think because of the money factor, that's why it is just such a huge industry and growing rapidly every year?
Well, I think it is the money, but I also think it's the demand. You can't have a supply without a demand.
Good point.
And a lot of the times we go after the supply. We want to, rescue the women. We want to restore the women. We want to, stop the trafficking, but we don't go after the demand. We don't go after the people who are purchasing them. We don't go after, the traffickers enough. We want to get these ladies rescued, or gentlemen. We want to get them rescued. But, like I said, you won't have a supply without a demand. If you kill the demand, there's no need for a supply.
That's something to think about. So who would actually go after the demand? I mean, is it legislation?
Yeah, tougher laws, more legislative. It's more legislative than it is, local. Our local government, we can fight and fight and fight, but until there's some tougher laws put in place, then there's nothing really we can do.
Something to think about. So how do traffickers get their victims?
A lot of times, it can go from it can come from any way. A lot of women, their stories are going to be different. I was promised a modeling gig. I went from I went from Alabama to California thinking that I was going to be a model, be famous, be a singer, and 15, 20 years later, I'm still being trafficked. Or at 15, 16 years old, my father started having me sleep with his friends. It just really depends on, the situation that they're in. A trafficker can get their victim through social media. Recently there was a hotel in Atlanta that was giving away concert tickets, and once the young ladies got there to receive their free concert tickets, they were loaded into an 18-wheeler and they were taken to another state to be trafficked. And just so happened that one of the young ladies kept her cell phone and stuck it in her underwear, and they got a ping from that cell phone. So it was about 40 to 50 young women in this 18-wheeler. So it just really depends on the situation that they're exposing themselves to.
That's some pretty deep stuff, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. You're really dealing out some heavy stuff to us today. We really appreciate it. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Up on our segment of Dear Younger Me, hear what Miss Tawanda has to say to the young Tawanda on the Josilyn Drake Show. We'll be right back.
The young Tawanda is about 15 years old. I would say at that age I was afraid to go for my goals. I would always tell everyone younger than me to never be afraid, to never fear that what you want to achieve in life is hard and you can't.
Welcome back. Our guest today, Tawanda with the Well House, is talking with us about human trafficking. Enjoying your interview and what you're sharing with us is very enlightening. Do victims always come from a low-income background?
Although they do come from a low-income background, they don't always. They can come from, a very wealthy family. They can come from, a well-educated family. It really depends on, the situation that the victim is in. You know, uh, a lot, like you said before, a lot of our victims have been molested as children. There's no there's no poverty rate on a molester.
Right.
So
Right.
it just really depends on, their situation that they grew up in. It doesn't have to be a low income background.
Okay. Is human trafficking another word for smuggling?
One would think, but no, it's not. Smuggling is basically like bringing, let's say, drugs or a good from a country to another country. Trafficking can happen, from state to state, from city to city. It doesn't have to go from country to country.
Okay. Okay. Does physical violence have to be involved in human trafficking cases?
No, it does not. I'll just use the scenario of the pimp to explain that. You'll have what you call a guerrilla pimp. A guerrilla pimp is someone who's very abusive, who's going to beat you, who's going to, rape you constantly. But then again, you could have a Romeo pimp. A Romeo pimp is going to be loving. It's going to be more like a boyfriend. It's going to, treat you nice, buy you nice things. It's going to make you feel special. And where that individual feels obligated to kind of, do the things that he's asking her to do because he's so nice to her. So no, it doesn't have to have physical violence.
Okay. Why don't victims of trafficking ask for help?
A lot of times, they've been manipulated and coerced to believe that, their trafficker loves them and that there is no help, that he's it. Or, you can tell somebody, but they're not going to believe you. So, in their mind, it's like, it's his way or kind of like no way. So, it's all a form of manipulation as to why they don't ask for help. And then sometimes, it takes about 7 to 10 times for a woman to come out of the lifestyle. So, they'll ask for help, but then they may go back. And then they'll leave again, but then they may go back. So it's hard to say that, they don't ask for help because sometimes when they do ask for help and leave, they may just not be ready.
Mm-hmm. And I totally understand what you said. I had the opportunity to meet some of the ladies at an event that they came to that I sponsored. And I remember talking to one of them, and she had, I think, maybe 3 or 4 times had asked for help. And she was just saying, just simple things like wanting a cigarette would just make her call the person and go back to the streets. We may think that's crazy, but hey, speak to that.
Right. Well, a cigarette, I think, is minor. It's, but a lot of times when an individual is being trafficked, 9 out of 10 times there's drugs involved. So whether the victim is taking the drugs or they're given the drugs or they're forced the drugs, at that point they're an addict. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times when they do go back, it's not because of the lifestyle or the pimp, it's because they're addicted to that drug. Mm-hmm. And they know that he's going to provide it. Mm-hmm. So, cigarettes, yes, but it's more heavier than that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, you all have a program where they can go through and deal with that substance abuse, but sometimes, as you said, they're just not ready, and it's hard. I know. I remember coming back to you all on another event, and I asked about the young lady and found out that she had decided to go back again. She had traveled all the way from California, for help, but found herself back out there again. Tell me, I think that breaks your heart because you all kind of bond with these ladies. You really care for them.
Yes, it does. We pour into them. And sometimes we pour 75-80% of our time, our life into them. I'll use myself. My children, they go to work with me every time they're out of school. Mm-hmm. So I'm pouring my family into them, showing them love and affection. So, when they do decide to go back, it does break your heart. You kind of want to hold on to them and tell them, it's going to be okay. We can help you. But like I said, in their mind, this person loves them. He's going to take care of them. He's going to give them the things that they want, that they need. And, we just try to show them, the love of Christ and how, it's His way and it's His will that you're loved. And it's up to them, when they're going to accept it. But eventually they do. They will.
So what encourages you to continue on when you face those type of situations? I'm sure you had more than what you really wanted to deal with. What encourages you just to get up and go to work the next day and do it again?
Well, I think really it's all about, I feel like this is where God has placed me in life. There can be 10, 15 women there, but if I'm helping one of them, I feel like, that's my encouragement. You may not be able to save everybody, but if you can save that one, that's one less night that she's on the streets. That's one less time she's going to have to sleep with someone for a bed or a meal. So that's my encouragement. I just want to, I want to help everybody, but I do understand that we can't.
Awesome. I've read that one way to identify someone dealing with this is if they can't speak for themselves, someone else is controlling the conversation, they can't look at you in the eye. Tell us some other ways we can identify trafficking victims.
Really, I would think like if you are somewhere and you see a gentleman with 3 or 4 women, that's a ringer for me. Before I started working with trafficking victims, I wouldn't pay that any attention. But I see myself now. Sometimes I drive up at the gas station and there may be a gentleman and there may be 3 or 4 women in the car, and I'm looking, and it's not that he's a trafficker, but it's just kind of things that I notice and that may be happening, especially along I-20, because that's a major highway for trafficking.
Okay.
So that's one. Also, abuse. You can tell like if there's physical signs of abuse. There could be a domestic situation, but it also could be trafficking. It really depends on what you're looking at.
Great feedback, and thank you so much for what you're doing. Hopefully it will help someone and help us all to really look out and see how we can help with this great challenge of human trafficking. I've also read that some of the people being used to bring other people into trafficking are females who befriend you at school or in the community. So what story are they telling these young people?
It could be anything from I can help, I can show you a way to make money, or, it's going to be very innocent, or, show up at school with new clothes, your friend, how did you get those clothes? Well, let me show you, and to them, it doesn't seem harmless, maybe in the beginning, but because they may have a Romeo pimp, he may be, giving them all these nice things, and, they're not doing it as of yet, but once he wants the favor returned, they're kind of stuck. And that's kind of really how it starts when it's a coercion from a friend or a female. Or, they'll have what they call the bottom. And the bottom is basically the young lady that's kind of over all of the women. So she will manipulate them and make them feel like, we're a family. And we kind of move as a family, and I'm kind of like his main girl, but we still love you. So we're going to do this for you, but you have to do this for us. And so it's all manipulation, pretty much what it is.
So what would you say to parents who are wanting to know how to kind of keep their kids out of this type of lifestyle?
Number one right now is manage your children's social media. There are so many social media apps that parents are not aware of, that their children are being watched. They're being, coerced. They're being manipulated. I was at a summit in Alabama last week, and there was a speaker, and basically he showed us a picture of a dorm room. And, to my eye, it just looked like a dorm room. And I have a niece that's in college, and she's posted pictures of her dorm room. But he he pretty much picked out things in that picture that I wouldn't have. Basically, she had a cell phone bill on the table, and her cell phone bill had her address on there. And then she had a credit card bill. Her credit card bill, he could read like different places. He could tell that she drank. He could tell that she smoked cigarettes. Her keys were on the dresser. He could tell what kind of car she drove, all from this picture. And basically, he was looking at it. He was law enforcement, but he was looking at it from a predator, a trafficker, a potential someone who's looking to lure her. And they would have, because they had so much information about her. If they reached out to her, hey, I noticed that you hang out at blah, 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 you know, she may have not ever even seen this person, but they got that from her picture that she posted. And there's so many different areas of social media that, you know, this older generation isn't aware of, including myself. You know, my children teach me things every day. So I feel like we have to look, you know, pay attention to them. Almost like if, you know, if you have a young child and you send them to bed with their cell phone, that's like letting a 55-year-old individual come in your house and walk past you and go upstairs and close your child's bedroom door. You know, you're sending them to bed with the ability to talk to anybody. You know, I would just advise them to, you know, keep watch over their cell phone. There's so many apps and so many different things that people watch and that they can get your children through.
Next, Tawanda has some wise words for us on today's segment of Wisdom Speaks. You don't want to miss it. Stay.
I've learned that God placed you in places for a reason. It is up to you to, you know, seek that wisdom from Him and achieve what He is placing you in that position for.
You mentioned there were a lot of apps on social media that most parents aren't aware of. Do you have a few names that they could be looking out for?
Periscope is one. Periscope is basically an app, and it allows you to just go live anywhere that you are. So basically, if I'm on Periscope and I live in Birmingham, Alabama, but I travel to Orlando, Florida, and I can, at that point, my Periscope is going to ping in Orlando, Florida. So anybody that's live in that area, I can just, it's going to be a map of the United States, and there's going to be like a bunch of little red dots all over this map, and you can just click on one. It could be in California, it can be in Florida, it can be wherever, and at that moment that person is live. And I mean, there's times where I've clicked on it and it's like a 12, 13-year-old girl in her bedroom, just live. And you can, just like on like Facebook Live, you can ask questions. People can ask her questions, and she was just answering questions, you know. And to her, it's innocent, but you don't know these people that are asking you questions, you know. And it's sad to say that a lot of times we don't look at our children as if they're doing something wrong. And to her, it may not have been wrong, but it really was wrong because you don't know these people to answer their questions. So they could have found her in that moment because she was answering these questions. So, you know, Periscope is one. And there's another one. It's called a calculator app. And a calculator app is basically, it looks like a calculator. But most cell phones come with a calculator. So why would you want to download a calculator app? But the calculator app is just like a vault to another portion of a phone. It's like a vault where you click on it and it's like another phone. So they hide things like pictures, you know, messages they shouldn't be sending, that type of thing. So it's just, you know, keeping an eye on what your children are doing, especially through their cell phone, their computer, tablets, whatever it is. Because I remember when I was younger, you know, my mom knew I was on the internet because, you know, we had dial-up. You can't use the phone without you if you were on the internet. Right. So now it's just Wi-Fi everywhere. So, you know, you may tell them to get off the phone at night, but they could still be on it. But I would just advise them to just, you know, keep an eye on them. And I know, like myself, I'm very overprotective because of, you know, the field of work that I do. And my children can't download an app without me knowing. It automatically comes to my phone. So it's just certain steps that, you know, we as parents have to take to keep our children from being, you know, abused and abducted.
I remember being at an orientation, and they were just saying how a parent was one of the police officers came and said, you know, your any child will do it, and one parent said, no, my child wouldn't do it, and so they kind of sent some tweets out or some Facebook posts, and lo and behold, the child began to correspond with the person who was speaking to them and met them somewhere, and the parents were, you know, just shocked at what their child would do, and so they took her as though they were taking her as a, you know, kidnapping her or whatever, just to show her a lesson. But what can parents really, how can they really help their children understand it's for their safety? I'm not trying to keep you from something that's per se good. I'm trying to just keep you safe.
You know, I think a lot of times, you know, we kind of try to hide them from certain things. Like I have a few friends that don't allow their children to watch the news. You know, I think when they see this and they see that these things are really happening, they'll start to understand that, hey, maybe my mom isn't so crazy. Maybe my dad isn't so overprotective. You know, these things are really happening. You know, bring some awareness to them. Explain to them, you know, these children are being taken. These children are being, you know, sold. You know, have them understand, you know, have them do some research. You know, you look on the computer and you do some research and write me a 2-paragraph essay
Right.
on trafficking, and then they will understand that it's really not a joke. It's really for your protection.
Very good, very good. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. And next week to the Josilyn Drake Show. You don't want to miss it. But right now, listen to Tawanda spill some tea on today's Inquiry Minds Want to Know. We'll be right back to conclude our interview with Tawanda.
My most memorable experience is my first day. I actually interviewed and was wondering, you know, coming into a job where I was helping people, how would they look at me? And when I got there, they were very open and they saw me as someone who would help them in their future, which made me feel like God placed me there for just that reason.
Welcome back. So if someone came across this situation, how would you help someone? Because most of the times the individuals don't want your help, or they're too afraid to get help because they're constantly being watched. What would you say if I was in the situation where I saw someone that I felt that was being trafficked and I wanted to help them? What would be my response? Because again, you can't help people who don't want to be helped. But again, some people want to be helped, but they're afraid.
Right. Well, what I would say is, you know, I wouldn't approach the individual, you know. Maybe make eye contact with them and see if, you know, if they will talk to you. Because a lot of time, if they're somewhere, you know, their pimp or trafficker is not too far away. So, you know, you can make eye contact with them, and they pretty much, you'll know if it's okay to talk with them, or they will approach you, you know. And we have a crisis line. Like I say, I answer it 24/7. The number is 1-800-991-0948. I advise everybody to put that number in your phone. And if you do come across someone, you know, just jot it down and give them that number. You know, if you want help, give them that number. And, you know, we can help them. There's nothing really that an individual can say to them to make them leave with them in that moment. If that's something that they want to do, you know, they're going to have to feel safe. They don't know you, so it would be hard for you to convince them to come with you, especially if they realize you know what they're doing.
Right.
So you could be just another trafficker to them. So, you know, just offer them the crisis line number and some, you know, options as far as help.
Yeah, I remember, it's funny you said that. I remember one of the young ladies saying when she crossed from California coming here, how she just didn't know whether she was going to be sent to another trafficker. She wanted help, she wanted to get out, and just had no idea. She thought it was a hoax, but was so glad that it wasn't. So,
right.
Yeah, awesome. It may sound strange, but after some of these ladies seek you all for help, they go back into this for a simple reason as a cigarette, and you've already addressed that. But tell us a little bit more, some other reasons as to why they would go back into this lifestyle.
Well, like I said, drugs is one. You know, they're addicted. A lot of times when there's an addiction involved and they're not ready to let that go, that will take them back over and over and over again. You know, and love. Some of them think that, the pimp loves them or he wants to be with them no matter, he may have beat me yesterday, but he was nice to me today. It sounds crazy to us because we're not in their situation. But, to them, that's love. That's what they understand as love. But you also have to look back in their adolescent years, their father may have molested them or beat them. It's almost like a ripple effect. So, we love them and we're a place of grace. We're going to show them that love from God. And if they want to go back, we're not going to hold them hostage. We're going to allow them, but we're going to welcome them back when they want to come back, because it's going to take them a while to understand that that's not love. They're going to see the difference when they go back and come back. They're going to see, well, I like this love better.
Awesome. So kind of walk us through when a young lady comes to the well house, exactly what happens. I know you mentioned about a transition home and all of that. So what are the steps and stages?
Well, once they enter into the home, they'll be in the immediate shelter, and basically they'll get basic health care, dental work. We'll meet all of their basic needs, and help them, kind of feel comfortable in that moment, because it'll take them a while, especially if they're coming down off of drugs, or if they're just kind of like all over the place. So we'll kind of meet them where they are in that moment, and we'll then try to guide them to, seeing life for what it is. They'll meet with a trauma counselor. They'll have a substance abuse counselor. They'll have a case manager, and they'll kind of manage them along the way. And if they do stay the 90 days, because a lot of times they don't, we may get them, they may stay one night, they may stay two, they may stay a week. But if they stay the 90 days and they choose to go to the long term, the case manager will then, guide them into steps of, long term goals. What do you want to do with your life? Is it that you want to get your children back? If you want to get your children back, let's seek parenting classes. Let's seek some GED classes if you don't already have a high school diploma. Like I said, we have some of the young ladies are in college. We have life skills. We have job skills. After job skills, they can go out into the workforce and obtain a job. So it's just it really depends on what it is that they want. We have a program. We have specific things that they have to do as far as counseling and life skills and job skills, those sort of things. But when it comes to their life, we meet them where they are. College isn't for everybody. Everybody's not going to want to do that. But we will kind of guide them, allow them to make their plan, and kind of guide them towards what it is they want to do.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the Josilyn Drake Show. I want to personally thank you because I know that you all make huge sacrifices. As you say, you spend 85% of your time really trying to help these ladies, as well as you spend your own income. I know that you take money out of your own pocket just to kind of meet some of those needs, such as cigarettes, in hopes that they won't return back to that lifestyle. And so I want to say thank you. Will you please tell us if someone wants to donate, be it via money, volunteering, or clothing or whatever, how can they help the Well House?
Okay. Well, you're welcome. I do it out of pure joy, and I feel like it's God's calling on my life, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But if you would like to help the Well House, we have an office, and the number is 1-800-991-9937, and you can reach out that way. We have a website. You can reach out. It's info@thewellhouse.org, or it's wellhouse.org, and you can reach out that way. But we have volunteer trainings every 2 to 3 months. We have groups that come out and just love on the ladies and do Bible studies, bake cookies. It really, and also we meet the volunteers where they are as well. We're not going to make you do something that you don't want to do or you don't know how to do. If knitting is your thing, hey, you want to come out and teach a knitting class, we're all for it.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We just talking. Please don't put some pictures of us so we can. Thanks for watching. The Josilyn Drake Show never stops. The conversation continues on Facebook and Instagram. Follow us, like us, and be a part of the conversation. Also, tune in on Thursdays at 5 p.m. to XL Radio and listen to the Josilyn Drake Radio Show. Until next time, enjoy life. See you next week on the Josilyn Drake Show. Get Josilyn's new single from her upcoming sophomore album, In This Place, on iTunes and all digital outlets. Log on to jocelyndrake.com and get your Dear Younger Me apparel.